Good evening. Good evening. I am Natasha Sistrunk Robinson, the visionary founder and chairperson of Leadership Links Incorporated. Thank you so much for joining us for this, our fourth part of the series Becoming for the Michelle Obama documentary and book discussion. I am thrilled that tonight we get to close out this series about becoming more. And so thank you so much for joining us. I cannot wait to share more and introduce you to our guest this evening. Before we do that, I want to thank our event sponsor for tonight. Tonight's event is sponsored by Pastor Takuma and Dr. Michelle Johnson, who are part of the Links Network. They're leaders of the People of God Church, a community of faith committed to strengthening the family of God through the simplicity of real worship, real service, and real relationships. They're also the co-founders of the Point College Preparatory and Leadership Academy, which is a preschool through 12th grade charter school that serves over 800 students and nearly 100 employees. They are committed to empowering people to win to the glory of God, both inside and outside the walls of the church. You can link up with the Johnsons and also support their work and find out more about how they are serving the community and fulfilling the purpose of Leadership Links. So thank you to the Johnsons for sponsoring tonight's event. I'm going to share our short organization video so you can find out more about us and you can tell others about us.
In August of 2015, Leadership Links established itself as a nonprofit organization. From what began as a yearning desire to encourage, equip, and mentor both aspiring and practicing leaders, would flourish into community building, mentorship, and spiritual enrichment. Driven by its mission to offer leadership education that facilitates impactful living, character, and spiritual development, Leadership Links guides others in developing and refining their best selves.
It's important for her to be around like-minded individuals where she can feel free to express herself and not feel uncomfortable about being a leader. And I just appreciate everything that this program has done for my daughter.
Dedicated to connecting people with purpose, Leadership Links delivers leadership training, conducts summer programs, hosts networking events, and establishes impactful mentoring relationships to slingshot people towards their goals. Making an impact on those around you is inevitable, especially when giving the right combination of love, inspiration, a strong network, knowledge, and a heart to serve. This is who we are. It's what we do. It's why we exist.
With inspiration, Leadership Links taught me how to be confident and when I take a different path than other people. And I actually found out that I inspire others when I go my own way in life. I love to volunteer in my community, and Leadership Links has helped me and connected me to other volunteer services.
We believe that this was ordained by God. We are in partnership with some wonderful people who really have a passion and a thirst to see the youth in our community reach their dreams, walk in their purpose, and to really grow and to fulfill their potential.
Here we're able to express ourselves freely in the no judgment zone. We're able to share ideas and be able to bounce ideas off of one another to not only make ourselves succeed, but others as well.
Grounded by desire to serve, its founding board members are all military veterans who find that service is just as important, in or out of uniform.
It's about all of us pushing ourselves to give our very best of what all of us have to offer to make our children better and to help their dreams to come true.
God is the one who created us in His image and for a purpose, and in knowing Him, our Links leaders can walk in purpose and learn how to love others well.
Sometimes it appears that there are plenty of reasons to feel doubtful about humanity, but there is a light. There are people devoted to helping others, teaching others, and believing in others. Be a part of the good going on in the world. Join the network, provide support, lend your time, change a life, link up.
So So just briefly want to share about Leadership Links. So our purpose here is really to educate and equip servant leaders who are using their goods and resources for the greater good of humanity. And so we are growing an intergenerational, multi-ethnic network of leaders. And one of the things that we do is that we encourage these leaders to pursue the higher echelons of leadership. So that's executive leadership, that's innovation, that's entrepreneurship. And that's one of the reasons that we're having conversations with a diverse group of leaders throughout this series. Our mission at Leadership Links is to offer leadership education that facilitates impactful living, character, and spiritual development. So we really develop leaders holistically here, and we do that through our 5 core values of love, inspiration, network, knowledge, and service. And so this summer's book discussion series is really an effort for us to strengthen our Links network and really provide good leadership role models and examples for everyone in our network, so they can be encouraged and inspired, as our core value says, to dream and do more. So I am thrilled to introduce our guest this evening. We are discussing becoming more. And one of the things we do, particularly with our programming for the young girls in our leadership development programs and our mentoring programs, is to really put before them career fields where women are traditionally underrepresented in the higher echelons of leadership. For us, we've observed that that's the fields of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, media and arts, the military and government, and business and entrepreneurship. So we want to put people in front of them who look like them, that are doing the very things that we are encouraging and inspiring them to be. So to that end, I want to introduce Mrs. Aliah Williams, who is a 2017 graduate of Hampton University. She has been a multimedia journalist and anchor for the past 3 years, starting her career just days after graduating, magna cum laude, with a degree in journalism. She began her career at WDVM in Hagerstown, Maryland, and is now a reporter and anchor on WDTN in Daytona, Ohio. Aliah is a member of the National Association of Black Journalists and was recognized on HBCU's Buzz 2019 as the top 30 under 30 list. She is passionate about storytelling, journalism, and advocating for HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, women empowerment, and so much more. We want to thank Aliah for joining us this evening. We also have with us, representing the area of military and government, but a lot of areas actually, Mrs. Stephanie Easter. She's retired from the Department of Navy as a member of the Senior Executive Service after serving as a member of the Senior Executive Service that's the high ranking service, for 34 years of civilian service. In her last assignment, she served as a director of Navy staff as the first civilian to hold this position. Mrs. Easter is a graduate of North Carolina State University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in chemical engineering, so she crosses over into STEM, and holds a Master of Science degree in engineering from the Catholic University of America. She has received numerous awards, including the Secretary of the Navy's Distinguished Civilian Service Award in 2019, the 2010 Black Engineer of the Year Award for Professional Achievement, and the 2009 National Women of Color Award for Managerial Leadership. And so we welcome Mrs. Easter and thank her for joining us this evening. Finally, we have with us Dr. Christine Darden, who is a native of North Carolina. She retired from NASA Langley Research Center as a member of the U.S. Senior Executive Service, that's high ranking, y'all, in March 2007. After nearly 40 years of service at NASA, she worked for 5 years as a human computer or a data analyst in the research entry physics branch, 23 years as an aerospace engineer in the subsonic flow and sonic boom minimalization, and 8 years as an executive. During her NASA career, Dr. Darden authored over 57 technical papers and articles, primarily in the areas of the sonic boom prediction, sonic boom minimalization, and the supersonic sing design. She is recognized as an international expert in these areas, having given technical presentations at many U.S. conferences in Germany, England, France, Greece, and Japan. Dr. Darden has been recognized with dozens of awards and honors, including 2 NASA medals, one for her work in leadership for the Sonic Boom program, and another for her active involvement in working with and encouraging students to pursue careers in math and science. One of the things we do here. In 2016, Dr. Darden was included in the book Hidden Figures that is authored by Margaret Shetterly, and now many of you know has become box office hit in the movies. So I've asked all the women and leaders this evening to share their Becoming More story. And so Dr. Darden is going to be the first to share with us. She has a few slides, so we'll keep the screen up. And when she's done, then we'll share and let the other leaders joining us share their story as well. Dr. Darden, are you ready to share with us?
Yes, thank you, and hello everyone, and welcome here to this evening. I would like to share with you a path that sort of guided my life. As a young child, I always thought about becoming a doctor, and this was, of course, without ever having had much biological science or anything like that. And but I did realize I like to work with my dad on the car, change the tires on the car, and do things like that. And I continued to enjoy doing that and fixing my bicycle with a piece of coat hanger wire, the brakes on my bicycle. And I continued on through school. I was in school in Monroe, North Carolina. It wasn't a big school system. They didn't teach higher levels of math and science. And so I took Algebra 1 in high school, and I did take a class in biological science and physical science. And when I took both of them, I realized I didn't care that much for biological science. I really cared more for the physical science. And so I continued on, and then my parents sent me away to another school in Asheville, North Carolina, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And the only class that I could take there in mathematics was plane geometry. And I took plane geometry, and the teacher was absolutely wonderful. I fell in love with plane geometry when I took it. She did a great job, and she said I did a great job in plane geometry. We just worked with each other. And it was at that time that I decided I was going to major in mathematics and be a mathematician. And I will tell you that the beginning of my senior year, before I left Allen, I had a job to do in the boarding school I was in. I had a job to do, and that was to go out and pick up the newspaper every morning and take it to the library. Well, on October the 5th, 1957, I took the newspaper. I went to get the newspaper, and the headline said, "The Soviets have launched a satellite, and it has traveled over us, traveling at 18,000 miles an hour, 4 times for the last 24 hours. And that shook this whole country. If none of you remember that, you're too young, but that shook this whole country, the school systems. Everybody in this country says, how did the Russians beat us to space? And so that was a real problem. They were encouraging kids to take math and science. And I'm certain that that impacted my life. Our high school yearbook had a space theme. I finished high school then and decided I was going to college in Virginia. So I came up to Hampton, Virginia, saying I'm going to major in mathematics, and realizing that the only mathematics I had in my background of any worth was the algebra and plane geometry, and that was pretty weak. And everybody else who had grown up in around Hampton, Virginia, and in DC and New York and Washington, they'd had calculus and trigonometry and all of these other math classes. And I'm saying, gosh, I'll just have to start where I am and learn it all. But my dad called me and said, Christine, I think you should get a degree in teacher education. I'm not sure that in 1958, there will be a lot of jobs for an African-American mathematician. So I said, well, Dad, I had really thought about being this mathematician, but I will let you know what I'm going to do. So I thought about it. I had perceived of myself as a mathematician, and that's what you see on this chart. My direction to a dream career. I had decided I wanted a career in mathematics. And so I had determined my career. Then I perceived of myself as a mathematician. I'm one. Now, what do I need to do to get there? Well, from where I was, I needed to take a lot of mathematics to get to where I want to be as a mathematician. And so I knew I had planned that already from this. And the next step, after I know what I need to get to a job like that, then I want to start preparing, work that plan. And the fourth P in my formula is persist. That means you don't quit. That means you keep going no matter what, but you keep going and preparing yourself. If you run into a roadblock, you go around it. If you run into a problem and everything, you solve that problem, but you keep going and you refuse to quit. And that's what I did. And I followed this. By doing this, I was actually able to, I called my dad back and said, I'm going to get a teacher education certificate, but I'm going to take all of my electives that after 4 years of college, I'm going to take all of my electives in higher mathematics classes. And so I did that. My senior year at Hampton, all I did was I did my student teaching in mathematics. I took 5 mathematics courses that semester. The second semester, I did my student teaching in physics and took 4 math courses. So I graduated with a teacher certificate to teach math and physics, but I graduated with 27 hours of mathematics that I did not have to graduate. And they were the higher level mathematics classes. I went off to teach for a year, and during that year of teaching, I went to Virginia State because they offered in-service classes free to teachers. And I took a math class with the other teachers from the school where I was working, and we all did the whole year. We went every Saturday morning. The same thing happened about 2 or 3 years later from Norfolk, Portsmouth, Virginia. I was teaching at a high school in Portsmouth, and I encouraged some of the teachers to drive to Petersburg, to Virginia State, to take some more classes. And we did that. We did that first semester. It all worked out. I had 1 carload full of people. That was an 80-mile drive. And on that year, it was a Friday night class. And so we worked all day on Friday. We drove to Petersburg. We stayed in class about 3 hours, and at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, drove the 80 miles back home, which was pretty tough because most of the time going home, my head was hanging out of the window. But because I had kept, well, that was the first semester. At the second semester, the ladies in the car and the men in the car came and said, you know, we're not going to go the second semester. I said, oh my goodness. I don't know that I want to drive this 80 miles by myself and go to class, but I can't quit. I cannot quit. And so I continued going by myself. And about a month or so later, we found out my husband was going to get a fellowship to Virginia State to work on a master's in biology. And I said, well, we're going to move, so I need a job up there. So the next couple of Friday nights when I went to class, I went to my teacher and said, it looks like we're going to be moving up here, and I need a job in this area. I wonder if you know of anything that, that I might use. He said, oh, well, yes, let me take you across the hall to the head of the physics department. He's looking for a research assistant in aerosol physics. So we went over to talk to Dr. Hodgkinson in the physics department, And he was looking for a research assistant who would do light scattering of non-spherical particles in the atmosphere. And before I left his office that night, I had that research assistantship because my math professor was recommending for me for that job. And I found out that while I did my research, I was going to actually be paid enough to get a master's degree. And I found out by that time that what I really liked about the mathematics was how mathematics connected to our real atmosphere, how equations that we learn to solve and everything are connected to the universe we live in. And we can solve a math equation and actually solve a physical problem that we've been stewing over. And so I really fell in love with that. And so for 2 years, I worked on my master's degree and I did the research in the light scattering. And so after that, I went to, when I was getting ready to graduate, I went to the placement office, and the young lady said, "Oh, you're getting ready to graduate." She said, "Didn't you know NASA was here yesterday recruiting?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." She said, "Well, they were. You fill out this application, I'm gonna mail it in." We did that. She mailed it in. 3 weeks later, I got an offer from NASA to come in as a data analyst. And so what I was showing you here is I perceived of myself as a mathematician. I knew what I had to do to get there. I started preparing in Hampton Institute when I took all those extra math classes. When I went to teach, I kept taking extra math classes. And then when everybody quit me in that car, I drove by myself at night. So I would not quit. And I says, persist, don't stop. When I got to NASA, I was hired as a computer, and I found out that the engineers were doing the same thing. You know, they was bringing equations like those I worked on in graduate school. And I said, well, I wonder why they are in the engineering office and I'm in the computer office. And the young lady says, no, some of those men have math degrees. I said, they do. She said, yes. I ended up going to the director of my department and saying, I would really like to talk to you. I'd like to know why a male and a female coming here with pretty much the same background are given such different jobs. Most of the women are being put in the computer office. They don't do research. They do what the engineers are telling them to do. They don't give talks. They don't write papers. They can't get their names on papers, and they aren't getting promoted. The men are going into the engineering office. They are told to research a certain area. They give talks on that area. They write papers on that area, and they do get promoted. And when I finished my question, the director looked at me and he says, you know, nobody has ever asked me that question before. I said, well, you know, I'm asking it now. And I left his office after that brief conversation. And 2 weeks later, I was promoted and I was transferred to engineering. Mm-hmm. And so that is how I got to NASA. That is how I actually got to an engineering job. And to make sure nobody jumped on me about not having a degree in engineering, when I was transferred to engineering, I signed up to get a doctorate degree in engineering at the same time. So nobody could say I didn't have the degree to do it. Mm-hmm. And we're going to show the other slide now?
Yes, ma'am. I'll show the other slide right now so we can just let you tell us briefly what we're looking at here.
Okay, what you're looking at. When I went into the engineering office, the first supersonic flight in this country had been in 1947. And supersonic flight means that the airplane is going faster than the speed of sound. And speed of sound, I believe, is 700 and some miles at sea level. It's pretty fast. And so the United States and the English and the French were going to build a supersonic commercial airplane. And the United States said, we're going to do some flight tests over Oklahoma City and Chicago. Well, when they did those flight tests, they were trying to find out how people were going to live with the sonic boom that an airplane generates when it's going faster than the speed of sound. So when all these military airplanes started flying over Chicago and Oklahoma City, they had thousands of people calling in, complaining about their cracked sheetrock, their cracked glass, their the disturbance it caused and everything. And so the United States canceled its program. They said, we aren't going to do it. We're going to cancel our program to build an SST. And we're going to put a law on the books that says no airplane, commercial airplane means you can buy a ticket and fly on that airplane. No commercial airplane can fly over the continental United States flying supersonically. And that law is on the books today. So NASA generated a new section that was going to work on to see if we could do anything to reduce the sonic boom. And that's where I was assigned. And I wrote a computer program. My first assignment, I wrote a computer program that says if you design an airplane that has this shape, the shape of the equivalent area of an airplane, like slicing a lemon, you slice it, you calculate the area where you are. If you step along the axis of an airplane and slice it all the way from back to front, you'll get areas all along. And then when you plot those areas, you've got a distribution. And so the program that I wrote gave us the area distribution that would give us a lower sonic boom. And so we built models at first. We built a small model. We tested them in our wind tunnel and we decided it worked. And we said, well, we need to do a flight test. So we borrowed 2 military supersonic planes, F-5s, and the one with the paint on it here is an F-5 that hasn't been changed at all. And the one in the middle and the one behind me in this picture is one that they actually put panels on. They pasted panels on it to make it have the right area distribution. And I was not in California on the day that they flew this test, but I was talking to a friend on the phone and he was in the control room. And they said, so when the signals came from this airplane into the control room, northeast of Los Angeles, they got a big crack from this F-5 that had no change to it. It was an F-5. So you got a loud boom, which sometimes could crack windows and things. But they got a very softer, much softer boom from the one that was developed by the computer program. And we had designed an airplane that fit that area distribution. Once that was done, we said, you know, we need to build an airplane from scratch now that it makes a supersonic plane, a great supersonic plane, and one that has the low sonic boom characteristics. Lockheed Martin in the last few years, I worked on that I talked about it for a few minutes. I worked on it for 25, 30 minutes. Lockheed Martin in the last few years started designing that. Right now, Lockheed Martin is building that airplane. They plan to finish it next year. They plan to fly it over people in this country and get their responses to the noise that airplanes generates. And then NASA is going to take that data to the FAA and say, would you please change the rule in this country so that if the data looks okay, and so that we can fly from New York to California in a supersonic airplane and get there in 2.5 hours instead of 4 or 5 hours. And that was how I got to what I was doing. And that was a job I really loved.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, there's so many nuggets there, and I feel like we could do a whole workshop just on everything you've learned on your journey. But I just want to highlight the ones like you shared, like perceive of yourself in career, plan what you need to get there, prepare and work your plan, persist, keep going and don't stop. And I love what you said about just asking the right questions. I think that's critically important. Thank you so much, Dr. Darden, for sharing your Becoming More story. Let me see who's going to share with us next. Mrs. Easter, would you like to go next to share your Becoming More story?
Sure. Thank you so much. I don't know how I feel about following Dr. Darden. I was hoping Aliah would kind of jump in there, but it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of this program tonight. So thank you very much, Natasha, for inviting me. It's really interesting. As I was listening to Dr. Darden, I was thinking about how much things have changed, but then how much they haven't. I found that so amazing. So my becoming story started when I was in school. I wanted to be a Spanish teacher because my favorite teacher taught Spanish. And so that's what I wanted to be. Like a lot of people who grow up, you see someone that you admire and you want to be just like them. But I had a high school guidance counselor who realized that I was good at math and science and introduced me to a program at North Carolina State called Minorities in Technology and Engineering. And so I went and I spent about I think it was a 2-week program one summer, and I fell in love with it and knew right then and there that I wanted to be an engineer. So, but studying engineering back in the 80s as a Black female was still a little bit of an anomaly. That's what I was thinking. I was listening to Dr. Darden, you know, and especially in chemical engineering, there wasn't a big support system. I still remember my chemical engineering teacher making an announcement at the beginning of class to the 5 women who were in the class that he didn't understand why women thought they should be engineers. So we all were very upset, marched down to the dean's office right after class, and that's when we were educated about what tenure means, which basically means he's not going anywhere, he's entitled to his opinion, and you guys will be okay. But after I got through my initial shock, disbelief, and anger, I decided to channel that. And that's when I learned that when you find yourselves facing an obstacle, you just buckle down and you just work harder. And that's what I decided to do, if for no other reason than to prove him wrong. And lo and behold, 5 years later, because it took me 5 years to get through the chemical engineering program at NC State, when I walked across that stage, he was the man who handed me my diploma. So what I learned was that you work hard, no matter what, to prepare yourself. And you have to be prepared to work hard, especially when you're a minority. And in our cases, they call us double minorities, women and African Americans. So I learned a lot through that experience. And that experience went with me as I started in the workforce. So unlike a lot of my chemical engineering colleagues, I went to work for the Department of the Navy, which was considered non-traditional. My first job was working on the design and development and test and evaluation of Navy aircraft and systems. So it was a very odd place to be as a chemical engineer, but I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity. I remember the first day I showed up at my office, and I was introduced as the new secretary in the office instead of the new engineer. And keep in mind, this was in 1985, not 1950, something like Dr. Darden was talking about. So again, I had those same feelings that I experienced when I was in college, but I remembered that I was prepared for this. I had been through it before, and I could definitely get through it again. But I also learned that once I got an understanding of the makeup of the organization I was working for, I understood why they thought I was an anomaly, because there were not many Black female engineers working for the Navy. So I went through a lot of different changes through that. I felt I had to work hard to prove that I deserved the opportunity to be there. And I did just that. I made sure that I gave my best every day and that I showed up every day determined to set a good example for everybody who was watching and to remove any doubt about me being an engineer and a good engineer. Mm-hmm. And so I quickly learned that working hard was necessary, but it wasn't sufficient when it comes to a career. And so I was fortunate enough to have a lot of leaders take interest in me. And I think a part of that was because of my work ethic. And they encouraged me to try things differently than my engineering career. So I transitioned from engineering into program management. And that allowed me to develop skill sets like communicating more, because I had to give briefings and things of that nature, and allowed me to get more experience in leading people. And so as I developed those skill sets, I was fortunate enough to be promoted throughout my career at Naval Air Systems Command. We call it NAVAIR, was the organization I worked for. And that's where I was blessed to become the first African-American female senior executive in that organization of about 30,000 people. And you may think 30,000 people, there had to be at least one more, but there was not. And with that came another lesson for me. And that lesson was to position yourself. Okay. But by that, I mean, be willing to get out of your comfort zone. I could have stayed an engineer my entire career, but I allowed myself to try things different and new, and they opened doors for me. And the other part about positioning was surrounding yourselves with people who have your best interest at heart. And that's what my mentors did for me. I'm hesitant to connect myself with people who shared my value base and I believed had my best interests at heart. And so I was able to become a senior executive in the Navy and be the first Black female in my organization. But with that opportunity came a lot of responsibility. Because to be honest with you, my biggest concern was I don't want anybody to regret giving me this opportunity. I don't want to be the only or the last. I was okay with being the first, but my desire was to work hard enough so that I was not the only or the last. And that's what I went off to do. And I did that, working hard, like I said, making sure I was always prepared, always positioning myself. You'll see P's here for me as well, Dr. Darden.
Yeah.
Position yourself for success by getting outside of your comfort zone and also surrounding yourself with people that have a similar value base. And then the third part was just having a positive attitude is what I've learned on my journey of becoming. Because there were many times when I had prepared and I made sure I did my very best. I had tried different things, taking calculated risk, and things still didn't turn out the way that I thought they should. And that's when I learned I had to have a positive attitude. Because people observe us and they get an understanding of who we are based on how we respond with adversity. I also learned that what God has for me is for me. So regardless of what I do or regardless of what's going on around me, if it's meant for me, it will be. So through this journey, I've learned that as well. And then the final part of my journey, after learning to be prepared, learning to position myself, learning to maintain a positive attitude, and the fourth part was just make sure that I always paid it forward. So I made it my mission throughout my career, and especially when I got to my last job, I was the director of the Navy staff. And that's basically the chief operating officer for the Department of the Navy. And I had the opportunity to lead a lot of civilians and people in uniform and meet some amazing people. And I think the most important part of that job was serving as an example. And I don't mean that as if, I knew more than anybody else, but serving as an example in terms of showing how to be ethical, how to be moral, how to conduct yourself as the person that you are and not compromising on your values no matter what. Because my parents always taught me your gifts will make room for you. Yes, so you do not have to step on other people. You don't have to, pull anybody down for you to get up. There's room for everybody. So that's kind of my becoming journey and the things that I learned along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think I just think it's important for us to hear people's story. Like everyone on this call has done really amazing things. And I think people don't always get to hear the story behind the accolades or the story or the principles, even the values, the morals, the character behind all of that that people see on the outside. And so I think it's so critically important that we share that. Thank you so much for sharing. A lot of the themes that you just brought up, actually, Michelle Obama wrote a lot about too in these last 2 sections of the book about, being the first and setting that example and not wanting to be the last, right? And the pressure of that. But one of the things, we're intentional about here at Leadership Links too is just like really cultivating an intergenerational network, because at least growing up for me, it was very natural for me to have conversations like this with grandparents and great grandparents. There was a time when we had 5 living generations in my family for years. And so having grandchildren talking to great grandmother, that was just a normal thing. And that's just not the case anymore. And so, we intentionally invited each of you, not just because of your accolades and how you've represented each of these fields well, but you're at different generations and you're representing different parts of the leadership journey. And so Mrs. Williams here, who's a journalist, who's doing great things and worked really hard to prepare to do those great things on the beginning end of her leadership journey. And so we want you to share, Mrs. Williams, about just kind of how did your becoming war story, and where are you with that? And you're muted, so let's make sure we unmute you here.
And Zoom will tell you right away too. You are. Well, thank you so much. I did listen and hear a lot of similarities to my own story, and because like you said, it's principles, and principles are applicable to any situation. It's about the power of the principle and applying it to what you need and taking what you can get. And I also think that I am at the beginning of my becoming journey, and I'm excited for what's to come by looking at the example of Mrs. Easter and Dr. Darden and Michelle Obama and you, Ms. Natasha, as well. Just knowing what's to come makes the current moment exciting. But if I can look back at when my becoming journey started, of course I'd have to say it started with my family, my parents. The principles and the values that they have were revealed to me at a very young age. Persistence and excellence. Excellence is their catchphrase. If you know the Williamsons, you know they talk about purpose and excellence. And to me, that manifested when I got to high school. My father told me, he gave me a list of scholarships and he told me to apply for all of them. And they did not, many of them did not apply to me at all. There was a breast cancer society for people who had family members who were affected by breast cancer. There was an Asian American scholarship, and he did not take no for an answer. He told me to apply for all of them, and I did. And I didn't believe him at that time. I didn't understand what he meant. And as you said, Mrs. Easter, what is for you will be for you. And I actually took home a lot of those scholarships and was able to fully fund my tuition at Hampton University. And that's where I really think my becoming journey kicked off. Being at an HBCU, everybody's situation is different. However, for me, being surrounded by Black excellence, Black young excellence, mentors who look like me, people who were in the positions that I wanted to be who look like me, that was a new experience at the time. And it was revolutionary. Things started to click and they made sense. It's possible. You can do it. It's not an anomaly. This is every day. We all look different. We all think differently. Come in a beautiful rainbow of thoughts and looks and things like that. So my time at Hampton, my 4 years there, I absolutely loved it. And while there, I was in the Scripps Howard School of Journalism, and the professors there were very adamant about you getting experience. And so they wanted you to go beyond the classroom. And I think that that's important for people to know. You have to go beyond what the textbook says, beyond what the checklist is, to really become excellent and great. So I had to go out and find my own internships. I had to do that on my own without the help of friends, without the help of family. I had to ask for them. I had to complete them. There were assignments within each internship that had to be done, and you wanted to make a good impression. And later I realized that making those impressions, making those good impressions, making those connections helped me when I got into this career. So following what my dad eventually had told me in high school about apply to all of them. When it came time for me to graduate and go into the journalism field, what I did was I made a list of every state I could see myself living in and every station that was in that state. And I applied to all of them, just one at a time. Just every day I would wake up at or before my class and I would apply until it was time to go. And however many I made that day was however many I got. And out of maybe 60 or 70, I think I only got 2 callbacks. But the fact that I had put in so much energy and effort meant that that was 2 more than I would have if I had only applied to what I thought I could achieve or that I thought would accept me. And out of those two, one woman told me she did not like my lipstick. She did not like the way I dressed. She did not like me pretty much. And she didn't say it in a mean way. Honestly, when I look back on it, it was kind of interesting just to be on that phone call and have that conversation, because at that point I was thinking, well, I don't know what to do here now, but I didn't let it discourage me, because I think the very next day or the next week, I got the one phone call that was an acceptance to WDVM, and that kicked off my career. So I just would encourage people to apply to it all, continue until you get that yes, because all you need is one yes. I could not work at all 70 stations, even if they all called me back and they all accepted me and they all liked me and they all loved me. Could only go to one. And thanks to the mentorship at WDVM, thanks to the learning experience, because you really have to start from nothing. You have to start from the bottom. You have to make your mistakes in this industry, and I'm sure others as well. If to mispronounce things on air on accident and be embarrassed by that and apologize to the whole city. You have to make sure that you make deadline and don't make it a habit to be late. As you said, it's about not being the last. So you're a representative for your community, your family, and yourself. So excellence becomes a habit. I believe that's a quote as well. So now that I had 2 years under my belt, I was ready to move on to Dayton, and that's where my becoming journey is. You all are a part of this becoming journey, because this is the first event of its kind that I have ever done. So next time we have a becoming discussion, I will add this to my story about how I had to learn how to express and share what I went through.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think one thing I'm noticing, like so much of what you all are sharing, so regardless of the field, is echoing a lot of the themes that Michelle Obama wrote about in the book. But I also want to echo what you said, a few things that you said, Aliah, because it's something that it kind of continues the conversation. So this is the part 4 of a conversation we've been having. Last week's conversation, for those who missed it and you want to catch up on that on Facebook or on our YouTube channel, we were talking about becoming us, and one of our couples was the president and first lady of Alabama A&M University, which is that one of the HBCUs here in Alabama. And so they were talking about how the HBCUs prepares young people, Black people, particularly when they don't have access or opportunities other places. And so that was really good. But I also love what you said, Aliah, about applying for all the scholarships, because one of the things we talked about with our young people in the Links Network is not just going to college, but to see college as an opportunity and a gateway to you actually fulfilling your purpose, which is our vision statement. And so it's not the end all. It's just, part of the journey. It's part of the path to help you get where you say you want to go. And it's not just about the degree. It's about the relationships. It's about the experience. It's about the internships. It's about the mentorship that you get for being in an educational environment like that, that's going to challenge you. And we always talk to them about going for free. And so often people don't go for free because they're not applying. And there's so many scholarships out there. And I'm sure all of you can attest that go unclaimed every year because people just aren't applying. And so we want to encourage the students to apply all the time, and so they can take advantage. Let's talk about this book. We've had some good becoming stories, and so I appreciate that. Let's see if we can get a couple of questions in before we do announcements and take some questions for the audience. And so now that you've gotten audience a chance to meet our guests, if you have questions for us, we encourage you to share them. You got a congratulations in the comment section, Ms. Aliah, but encourage you to share your questions in the chat box of Zoom, or you can share them on the comments with us on Facebook Live. So Let's see. One of the things Michelle Obama says in this section of the book is if you don't get out there and define yourself, you'll quickly you'll quickly and inaccurately be defined by others. And so I don't think all of you need to answer, but maybe one or two of you, if you want to answer this question, how did you define yourself at various stages of your leadership journey and career path?
If I can speak here, journalism in my industry and my job is very much about branding. And sometimes that can become an obsession. People want to brand the way other people do, or they see somebody with a brand that they like and they will like to copy that. However, for me, I found that branding or defining myself and not allowing other people to define me came from just being myself. I saw a lot of examples of people that I wanted to be just like, but if I ever tried to wear the clothes like them or wear my hair like them, it just didn't fit, it didn't look right, and I didn't even feel myself. But when I do the stories that I'm passionate about, for example, I'm very passionate about childhood literacy, education, HBCUs, as you shared before, community events. Other people might be very passionate about crime and justice, court stories, and so I cannot force myself to be like those journalists. I can only be like Aliah Williams. And that's how I'm able to define myself. Other people and people who are in authority wanted me to do things more this way, or they wanted me to follow those stories. I do want to be a well-rounded person. But when I am myself entirely, and I allow myself to discover different things, so I can't just pick 2 or 3 things that I like and stick with those. I have to jump over the line and try it and see, oh, I do like it. I can do this. This is part of who I am. This is part of my brand. This is part of who Aliah Williams is becoming. Then when I give myself the opportunity to do that and I discover something new, I can collect that and work on it as part of who I am. And it's easy to be influenced, especially for the young ladies who might be watching, when you have Instagram, Facebook, all these social medias. I have learned that you have to unplug. I've learned have lots of apps. So if you want to ask me about what apps I use because being on your phone is habitual for my generation and the generations after me. So you can use your time more wisely. You can do brain games, puzzle games, relaxing games, things that will not fill you up with what other people want you to be, how other people define you, because it's psychological. That just seeing those images bombarding you is going to cause you to have a distorted image, a warped view of yourself and your life and how it should be. So I definitely encourage taking a break from that as well. Discover what it is that you love, what you like, and what feels like when you say it out loud. That sounds like Aliah Williams. That sounds like Nyla Williamson. That sounds like Natasha Robinson. So.
That's so good. That's so good. Thank you, Aliah. I'm going to ask you, Mrs. Easter as well, and Dr. Darden, I'll get you first on the next question. But I'm going to ask you, because you went from being an engineer to basically making a shift in, I tell young people all the time that, like, I've had probably 10 careers at this point, and I'm only 40 something, right? Because what you find is that as you discover on the journey that you can do other things and there's other opportunities out there, and what you maybe thought you wanted to do or you thought you were about, that can shift once you get exposed to other things and other opportunities. And I think sometimes people don't do it because they're comfortable in the thing they're in, or they maybe feel afraid about the thing that's being offered to them, or they may be feeling like a failure. So when you think about the various stages of your leadership journey, career path, and in defining yourself or not being defined about other people, how was that for you when you were making that career shift?
It was very much similar to what Aliah was talking about. It's about finding what works best for you. Because I found out that I liked engineering, I was good at math and science, but I loved integrating and I loved people and helping them. So I wanted to veer towards what I loved. And a lot of times we limit ourselves based on what we can do. And there comes a time in your career, in your journey, where you get to say, what do I want to do? What is my passion? Yes, I'm a good engineer. Yes, I can do that. But is that what gets me excited every morning? And that's what really got me to make the jump to program management. The other part of it was from an opportunity perspective. The biggest impact was there. You know, if I had stayed in engineering, I would have had a very narrow realm of influence. And I saw changes that I wanted to make, I wanted to be a part of. So that propelled me. And what was interesting is that there weren't role models. There was nobody like me, you know, doing these things. So I learned very early that I had to do me. Okay. And that's what I love about, you know, it's like you got to do it in a way that works for you. And especially working in a military organization. I still remember my boss at the time, the admiral I was working with, he's like, well, you're not acting very SES like, you know? And I'm like, so what does that mean? You know, he's like, well, you know, you're talking to everybody and you're, you know, you're spending time, you're, you know, you're too approachable. And I was really shocked, but that's the military way, right? It's like, there's hierarchy, there's rank, and the two shall never meet. But that wasn't me. And so I went into this journey, like, I have to do me. I told people many times, the job is hard enough, is even harder if I try to do it as somebody that I'm not.
Yes.
Okay. Or in a way that doesn't work for me. So we're at our best when we are, who we have been created to be. And I'm just thankful that I was able to show that, hey, I don't have to be the way you are. And you're right. Young people have so much peer pressure, and you see everybody around you and you feel, well, if I'm going to accomplish that, I have to do it that way. That is not true. Okay. There's more than one way to get to anything. And you have to find the path that works for you, even if it is the path that is least traveled. Do it, stay true to who you are. And that's what I try to do. And it's not easy. It is not easy. Even as adults, we all succumb to peer pressure. We all feel that. But I've learned that you just have to do you and go with what works for you and where you can make the biggest impact.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for that. Dr. Darden, I'm coming to you for the next question. So one of the things that Michelle Obama wrote about in her book is that she said that there's this age-old maximum in the Black community that you got to be twice as good to go half as far. We've all heard it, right? And as the first Black or the first African-American family in the White House, they were being viewed as representatives of their entire race. Any error or lapse in judgment, we knew, she said, would be magnified, read as something more than what it was. And so how can we overcome, as Black people particularly, and leaders, this maximum, especially for children? Because one of the things I've found as a leader myself, and being in these spaces where you're the first or the only, or it's predominantly white and predominantly male, that white men in particular have grace to fail in ways that oftentimes we don't. And so how is it that we can encourage, especially our young people, to take these risks and then know that they have grace to fail, and they can use that failure even as an opportunity to learn and become better leaders?
I think we should take risks very often, but I've always tried to do the best job I could on any job that I've had. And I was sitting here thinking about the fact that when I started working Sonic Boom and it was a new work area, everybody that came to the center to talk wanted to know what we were doing in Sonic Boom. Well, then all of a sudden I was being called to brief these people about what we were doing within the program, which is something I had not done a lot of speaking on. And I went off and joined Toastmasters. I joined Toastmasters, especially for the prepared topic, but also for the question and answer part of Toastmasters, which I think is very helpful for you to actually answer the question that is asked. Or maybe like politicians, you just slip a little bit to the side and answer it anyway, which is what they often do. But so I have always tried to do my best and to and let. actually supervised a lot of white people, and there was one that actually asked me, said I had programmed something wrong, and I said, I've been through it, I've checked it, I know it's right. I said, but you actually took the equations and did some things with them before you gave them to me. I said, let me check what you did. And when I checked his, he had a sign wrong. And when we corrected that sign all the way through the process, the code worked right. So they have to know that they can't make assumptions about what you know and what you do. And you show them that I am perfectly capable of doing this, and, you know, don't treat me like that.
So good. So good. So good. Miss Aliah, I'm gonna come to you. It says, one thing Miss Michelle Obama wrote about was she was visiting a school in England called Elizabeth Anderson School, which was a diverse student population, mostly girls of color, who were economically disadvantaged. And she said that she knew, looking at those girls, that you had only to look around at the faces in the room to know that despite their strengths, these girls would need to work hard to be seen. They need to fight the invisibility that comes with being poor, female, and of color. And so I know that hasn't been your story per se, but I know that you invest in girls, and I know that you've been around other girls. And since you're the younger among us, what have you seen from young girls, and how do you engage girls so that they can stand against this kind of invisibility or maybe being overlooked?
Well, I have worked with young girls because that is part of my passion. And what I see a lot of times is there's so much eagerness, and I can see that they are ready to shine, but sometimes they harness it back and hold it back because of fear of being made fun of, or this isn't cool, or especially now with social media, it can be put online and instantly you can be a mockery or you can be a celebrity within seconds. And so that puts a lot of fear and anxiety, and I can see that in a lot of young ladies that I work with, have seen, speak with. And I think that to fight that, it will take people giving genuine love and genuine compliments. I think that we don't realize how far you look beautiful, I love your hair, I love this outfit can go, because sometimes they just do not hear that. And while it is so simple, I feel that a constant reassurance will keep them from hiding and harnessing what it is that they have. And once you feel comfortable enough to let that go and let what's inside of you shine, you're going to bless and you're going to impact our world. Because if we keep asking people to dim their shine and dull their shine and not speak up and not answer, we're missing out. The industry is missing out. The world is missing out. And so I find it, one, I don't do it because I have to, but I love to tell little girls, oh, I love your hair. Oh, you look beautiful. I love what you're wearing. Oh, you can sing. Oh, show me more. Tell me more. And I don't want them to feel that they have to hide that away. And I can imagine that if they're disadvantaged or poor, they might have heard or seen things that say that they're disqualified already. But again, like my dad told me to apply for everything, there is a space out there for you. So you can't disqualify yourself before you even get there, because we have known and we've seen that people of other races and backgrounds will apply for things or ask for things knowing they have no credentials for it at all. So we need to have the exact same confidence that they have. And what's the worst somebody could say is no. Yep. And you say, okay, well, thank you. And you keep the smile on, keep that positivity, like Ms. Easter said, and you keep on pushing and you go to the next person. I used to be terrified of people saying no. I sold Girl Scout cookies when I was younger, very much younger. I was first, second grade. And when I tell you, I was almost frozen in fear. I almost wanted to just beg my parents, you just buy them all, please. I don't want to ask anybody anything. I don't want them to tell me no. And honestly, I didn't even really get over that completely until I became an adult as a journalist. I have to call and ask people every day for interviews. And I sometimes will go in thinking they're going to say no. They're going to say no. They're going to tell me no, and I'm not going to have a story. But more recently, I just have to tell them, this is why you want to talk to me. This is why you want to tell this story. This is why you want to give me an interview. And I'm able to get my work done, my deadlines in, and everything, because I know that I can offer value. I know that I can offer them something.
That's so good. That's so good. I think, and it's two things here, right? Like, I think, I have a you have not because you ask not mentality in life. Like, if you tell me no, then I'm no worse off than I started. And here's the thing, though, you might say yes. And it might be a benefit to the both of us. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. But I think another thing is, and all of us have spoken to it briefly, but I want to bring it up here because it's something we're very adamant and intentional about at Leadership Links, is that mentorship is so critical, right? Like Michelle Obama choosing to show up somewhere. She probably had 1,000 schools in that area that she could have chosen to attend, but she made the choice to attend that particular school because representation matters. And she knows that her presence and her showing up in that space communicated, even without her saying anything, that these girls were valuable and worthy of the attention of someone of her status, really. And so I think mentorship is critically important. And so and that's why all of us do what we do, right? A lot of times, not just in our professional work, which we mentor there as well, but just in our volunteer service. And it's one of the things we're really adamant about in Leadership Links. So I always tell the girls in our programming here at Leadership Links, like, show up like you belong in the place. Like, show up like you belong in a place, speak like you belong in a place, dress like you belong in a place, sit like you belong in a place, like this is your table, right? And so we talk, and that's the training we do here, because we're about leadership development. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about empowerment. We do it. Like, do the thing. And so I think that's critically important. Dr. Darden and Mrs. Easter, I want to ask you, because one of the things that Michelle Obama wrote about a lot, and she actually started this section out like, nobody tells you, there's no manual about how to be first lady. And so while none of us are first lady, that you've both been first or among the first in a community that weren't used to seeing people who look like you, both because of your age or your race or your color, but also because of your gender. And so when you think about that she said it was a weight and a joy, even when President Obama won the election, that it was just she understood it was significant and that she was not just representing herself. So what are some feelings that you experienced being among the first representatives in your career fields?
Well, I would say there were probably expectations amongst a lot of people of what I would do and what I would be. And again, I certainly wanted to make sure that I was there and doing my work and everything. The first time I took a class with about 15 white men and me, nobody said a word to me. And of course I kept going, and actually after the first test, and I guess I don't know what they did, but after the first test, a couple of the men in the class came over and said, "Hey, we were just wondering if you would like to join our study group."
Right.
Right. And I said, "Sure, that would be wonderful." And actually, we studied together sometimes, and we went through the rest of our classes together.
Yep.
And they became friends, but that's not how they treated me at first, and I did not let that send me off in the wrong direction.
I'm laughing at your humility. Well, I don't know what happened. You got the best grade in the class. That's what happened. That's what happened.
Well,
you got the best grade in the class.
Sure that's what it was.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Mrs. Easter, go ahead.
It's definitely a combination of a joy and a weight. Similarly, and I'm just amazed that even with the time difference, how things have not changed that much. I remember when I applied for my first executive job as a senior executive, and there were 3 white men in my office who applied for the job as well. And they were very vocal that if I got the job, they would not work for me. Okay. And and had no problem saying that out loud. And I was like, at first it was like, what do you mean? And then quickly it was like, that's their problem, not mine. So when I got the job, needless to say, none of them quit. Okay. They ended up working for me anyway, and it all worked out. I think a part of it was because of the way I dealt with it. I never got in their face or anything like that. I had to make sure I maintained my character at all times. But it's kind of a unique situation when you accomplish something and you've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to do it. That joy can easily be overcome with the burden, because it is a responsibility. It's like everybody's watching you. It's like you're living in a glass bottle, and it's like everybody's expecting you to make everything better for them. And that was what I alluded to earlier, is that my goal was just to do my best and make sure that no one ever looked and said, hey, I told you we should not have hired an African-American female. I never wanted those words to come out of anybody's mouth. I wanted to make sure that a path was made so that other people who looked like me could come behind and do that. And that's an unbelievable weight. And I found myself throughout my career sometimes being preoccupied with that. And that's not healthy though either. Yeah. Okay, so you have to stay focused on what it is you're there to do. I even had instances where, I had everybody mad at me. I wasn't, a part of the old boy network with the white men in the military, but because I wasn't supporting every Black woman cause that there ever was, then I wasn't really a part of them either. You find yourself in this place, and that's where you just have to be grounded in who you are. Yes. And, and just secure in what you've been called to do. And you'll get through it. And it is, like I said, it's an unbelievable experience. It has its ups and downs. It's the joy, it's a burden, it's a privilege, it's a responsibility. It's all of those things at one time. Yeah. But if you stay grounded in who you are and whose you are, you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I tell people sometimes ask about my experience at the Naval Academy, and I said it was hard, absolutely. I said, but the reality is, like, I would have struggled more if I didn't know who I was when I got there. Yes. Right, because there were plenty of people ready to tell me who they thought I was, right? Yes. And so if I didn't know who I was when I got there, then a lot of that stuff would have stuck, and I might not have finished because to your point, we're going to quit. We're not going to work for you. They want you to quit. They had no intentions of quitting, right? They wanted you to quit. Like, they know they wanted the job and it was paying well and they wanted to feed their family, but they were trying to intimidate you to quit. And I think a lot of times when we don't understand what's being communicated to us and we assume that it's about us, it's really not about you at all. Right? This is some other stuff that they're dealing with. And so you can't make their stuff your stuff. Exactly. That's one thing I've learned on the leadership journey. And so, there is a pressure and a weight of that. But I also want to say to, especially our young people, that you can do your best and that's all you can do. And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. I remember Michelle Obama our first discussion was about the documentary. And one of the things she was saying in the documentary, that when she got on the plane, Air Force One, to leave, when they finished their 8 years without scandal, that she just cried the whole time, because she said she cried for like 30 minutes because she felt so much pressure to be perfect. And so I think there's a difference between doing your best and being excellent, right? Not being slothful, not preparing yourself. Like, these are things you have control over. Be your best. That does not mean, though, that you won't make mistakes or you have to be perfect and do it right all the time. Because again, I think something that we forget, like, there's certain people that have they have privilege to fail and learn from those mistakes and failures. And so I want our young people, this is why mentorship again is so important, in sponsorship, that you have people that are around you, and you need to cultivate those relationships of people that can help groom you and dust you off and tell you to like brush that off and get back in the fight. right? And get back on the path and get back to work, and wipe your face and put your lipstick on and go back out there and get it done, you know? And so that's what we do. We're going to say, get yourself together and get it on. So thank you all so much for that. We're going to take a few minutes because we have some questions coming in. I know if there's some more questions you have, we're going to take some announcements real briefly for a few minutes. And as we're taking announcements, we'll be gathering our questions. And so if you have announcements, if you have questions, we encourage you to share them in the Zoom chat box. We have several people joining us on Facebook to share it in the comments there. We'll be collecting those. I'm going to share my screen here to tell you about some things we have coming up, and to also share about a little short, like less than a minute clip from our sponsors. So let's do that and we'll come back for questions. So here's a short clip of the work that the Johnsons are doing at their charter school in North Carolina, The Point. So you can, if you're in the North Carolina, Jamestown, Triad area, High Point, Greensboro, they are taking registration and applications right now for pre-K through 12 kids to join their school. And so they are a part of our Links network, and we encourage you to check them out. Thank you so much to the Johnsons and The Point for sponsoring the event this evening. We have a few upcoming events for you for Leadership Links. So many of you are attached to children who are home and on social media and learning at home and enjoying their summer. We have an event coming up in a couple of weeks about how to keep your children safe online. So if your child is using social media, they're interested in using social media, you don't know what Snapchat or TikTok is, you need to know. So we will encourage you to join us on July 7th for this event, how to keep your children safe online. You can go to our website and register. It is free for the children that are, or the youth that are already in the Links network, but everyone is required to register. We will not make this available on Facebook or YouTube. This is an event that you need to register for, and we'll send you information of how to join once you register. So we encourage people to do that. Then we'll take next week off as a break, but we're picking up our next book discussion for July, A Sojourner's Truth, which is actually my book, the subtitle, Choosing Freedom and Courage in a Divided World. A lot of people want to have conversations about race right now. I think it's important that we have these conversations, and it's not the only conversation that we have, but we want to have a conversation about leadership and about character and about history and how these things inform how we deal with people that are different than us. And so we've invited some wonderful conversation partners for our July discussion, and we invite you to join us. If you've already registered for the Becoming book discussion, you do not have to register for this one. You only need to register once for the entire summer series, and then you'll get the dial-in information for this one. So if you're joining us on Facebook, we encourage you to register for next month's discussion if you haven't registered yet, and we encourage you to do that. We pray. We are praying people. We pray once a month on the third Saturday of each month. We pray all the time, but this is when we join for our Links Network prayer call. And so the next one is going to be on Saturday, July 18th, the same dial-in information and access code. And so we're providing you for the dates for the rest of the year. Encourage you to save those on your calendar and join us then. We have our Global Leadership Experience Tour that many of you know we were going to do this summer, but we postponed the next summer. And so we just encourage you to continue to share about that opportunity and to support that event as we're still doing our fundraising efforts for it. We're sharing some links in our Facebook comments and our Zoom chat if you want to find out more about these things. We're just kind of sharing ways that you can connect with us beyond the virtual event and learn about more what we're doing. And so you can follow us on any of these social medias. A lot of times our newsletter, our monthly newsletter is where we first share information. And so if you're not receiving that, we want to make sure that you do. And so you want to add our email address to your contact list so the newsletter is not going to your junk or spam folder, but it's actually going to your inbox. And then follow us on social media. Specifically, we're trying to get people to follow us also on YouTube so we can customize that channel. We need 100 followers there. So if you're not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please take a moment to do that this evening. And then lastly, there's a couple of slides about just how you can link up with us and how we're mobilizing the network, even in the midst of everything that's going on right now. One of the ways you can join us is by volunteering with the organization. So we have a volunteer form on our website. It takes you all 10 minutes and just to give us a little bit more information about you and how you might be interested in working with us. And if you're interested in mentoring, either just to be a guest speaker or to make a long-term commitment to the youth in our program, we encourage you to fill out our mentoring interest form on our website as well. Lastly, we wanted to let you know about some community needs, some network needs for the organization. So if you're looking for a place to volunteer or in the future, maybe intern in any of these areas or areas of your expertise, please fill out that volunteer form and reach out to us on our website. And if you're interested in donating to the organization, you can send a check to our post office box, which is available here. And we are right now really in a push to get 100 Links ambassadors. These are people that give monthly recurring donations of $25 or more per month to ensure that we can continue to expand our work and our programming. And so if you're interested in that, we encourage you to go to our fundraiser page on our website and download the Links ambassador package, where it gives you instructions on how to set that up. So now we're going to take some questions from the audience. Let's see what we have here. I have a few, and we have them coming on from Zoom. And let me see if we have, so I have one here from one of our Links leaders, one of our youth. She says, how do I find out, so I'll ask Dr. Darden and Mrs. Eden, how do I find out what type of engineering that is of interest, may be of interest to me? How do they explore that career in engineering?
Well, I think one of the things that depending on how old you are, I think it's good for youth to be exposed to lots of different things as they're growing up. So they have the opportunity to start understanding what it is they liked and things like that. My mother gave me a talking doll when I was 5 years old. And she later told me, she says, you know, Christine, I was very disappointed that you didn't play with that doll so much. You cut her open to find out why she talked. And I said, you know, that was an indication, I think, of what direction I was headed in. But I think for students, one of the things that all of the students that I have spoken to about Hidden Figures all over the country, they said, we didn't know women did that kind of work. We've got so many counselors and people out here who say, well, girls don't do math or girls don't do so-and-so. And I said, tell parents, don't let people tell you that, tell your girls that. If your daughter is interested in math or science, just let them go that way, but you just support them so they learn that way. Now, they might eventually want to go into another area, but as we've all heard here tonight, switching to another area is not wrong. Sometimes we can combine things and switch and actually do very well. But the exposure to camps and things when you're young, reading, there are lots of ways for you to learn about the different careers and things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. And the only thing I'll add to what Dr. Darden mentioned was that you don't have to know exactly the type of engineering that you want to do right away. I did not declare my major in chemical engineering until after, my first year in college. So I think you should take advantage of all the camps, like Dr. Darden said, just kind of see what you like. and go where your passion is. Do your research though. I chose chemical engineering because I liked chemistry. And at the time, I had no idea that chemical engineering had nothing to do with chemistry, and it was more physics and thermodynamics and things of that nature.
Mhm.
But I was vested, and I'm like, okay, I'm not turning around now. But I would say just kind of take your time, expose yourself to a lot of different things. If you like taking things apart and putting them together, you may want to focus on mechanical, if you like process flow, chemical, if you like airplanes or aeronautical, there's so many options now. And there's so many opportunities to do double degrees and things of that nature. So don't limit yourself. Just kind of go with it, expose yourself to everything, and you'll know when you've reached the right thing.
Yeah. And I think I love what you're saying there. And one of the things we encourage these young people to do is, sometimes they don't always follow through, but we do encourage to take advantage of every opportunity, right? Every opportunity. And I think a lot of times we throw out words like engineering. I know for me, I was saying in high school, I wanted to be an engineer, but I was saying it because people were saying the smart thing for people who are smart, you become a doctor, engineer, or a lawyer. And I know I didn't want to do the other two, but I didn't really know what engineers did. I didn't have an understanding of that. But they was like, oh, you smart, Natasha, so you can be an engineer. And then I got to the Naval Academy, I was like, I don't want to do that, right? And so it's just one of those things where constantly being exposed and constantly asking questions and constantly doing your research. And when those summer programs are offered, take advantage of those summer programs. When things like this are offered, take advantage of those things to learn and grow. And so thank you all for sharing that. I wish we had more time because I had a few more questions, but I'm going to ask you this last, I for real, I'm like, I had some more questions. I'm going to ask you this last question because, and then we're going to do our thank yous and our creed to honor people's time. But I'm going to ask you this last question because I think where we are right now, it's just such a difficult time for everyone. And it's hard for people to see light and hope and find joy, regardless of what age you are. I mean, we're talking to young people, we're talking to parents, we're talking to adults, and we're seeing that. And so one of the things that Michelle Obama said, and I wanted this to be kind of like our closing note before we close here, is that I knew from my experience that even during hard times, maybe especially during hard times, it was still okay to laugh. And for the sake of the children in particular, you have to find ways to have fun. And so my parting question for all of you, because we're in a hard time, what are you doing right now in this season to laugh or have fun?
I can start. I will definitely.
Well, go ahead.
I'll go very quick. My husband, we have so much fun together. I'm so thankful. We're still honeymooners, just got married March 7th. So we have a lot of fun together. It's good to have somebody who is equally yoked, like-minded, and we can laugh at the same things and just have fun together and take breaks from the seriousness of both of our careers. He's a medical student. COVID, I'm in journalism, a lot of the protests, so we just take a break from all that's going on to just laugh and talk with each other.
Well, I don't have any young children around me, but I'm enjoying the time that I've been spending with my husband all of this time. Haven't been going out very much because all my trips got canceled. but I think that has been fun, and it has been great to do that and to just think things will get better.
Yeah.
And mine is around family as well, because that's so important to me. And I retired from the Navy in December, and I'm learning to laugh at myself more, as my kids have come by. Well, they're not kids, they're adults now, but, and we just start talking about, and they decide to make fun of me. And there's a time I'd be like, hey, I'm your mom, you don't do that. But now I just laugh along with them, and, and learn to laugh at yourself, and, the things that you think are so important. That's one thing about the times we're going through now. It kind of helps you center on what's really important. And it is family, it is faith, but other part of that is fun. Life is short, you got to enjoy it. And that's what I'm just trying to do every day.
Yeah. I say this this is not the first wilderness, and it will not be the last. And so, like you said, the value of people. And we thank you for sharing that and taking advantage of those sweet, simple moments and enjoyments in life. Thank you all so much for your time this evening. I'm just going to share our little thank you slide so people can see your faces and remember to look you up to learn more, because all of you are on social media and we've shared that. And so we want to thank again Dr. Darden. We want to thank Mrs. Easter, Mrs. Williams, all women representing in the areas where we are encouraging our young people to at least expose them to these areas where women are traditionally underrepresented in a higher echelons of leadership. So thank them. Thank you all, ladies, for joining us. And thank you to People of God Church and Pastor Takuma and Dr. Michelle Johnson for their sponsorship of this evening's event. And so we are very thankful for that. And lastly, we like to close all of our events with our Leadership Links Creed. And so I'll recite it for those who are new to the Links Network and just joining us maybe for the first time. And our creed states that I am Leadership Links, part of a community founded on love, inspiration, network, knowledge, and service. I am never alone in this world. God has strategically placed me in the right place at the right time and connected me to the right people to fulfill the purpose that He has for my life. Therefore, I will actively take part in the great work God is doing in the world. I promise to always stand, reach out, and link up. Thank you so much for linking up with us. And I hope this is not our last time to link up together. And so peace and blessings to each of you ladies, fabulous leaders. And thank you all for your public service, because that's actually the work that you do. All of you have done. It has been a service to the public. And so we thank you so much for that, for advancing the common good in the world. And thank all of you for joining us this evening. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.